What's going on, ladies and gents? Ronnie here from Speed Lab. As you guys can see, we got the GR Corolla on the lift for a different reason this time. So we did get our downpipe completely done, which we'll show you guys once the car goes up in the air. They have been fixtured, so they are ready for sale. You can just directly hit us up on Instagram to get them. It's gonna be a while until they go on the website, but we do have 6 of them in production. 2 of them are spoken for, the rest of them are for sale. Before going on the dyno, the clutch started to slip. It actually started to slip while Tony was driving the car and coming back from Chris's shop, because we were making a couple last minute revisions to the mid pipe so it doesn't rattle. You know, he got them fixtured and all that stuff. So when he was coming back, literally driving back on the freeway, it started to slip. So the clutch was starting to smell, and I did launch it a handful of times, and not very nice launches either. But you know, we kind of knew that the torque capacity for these clutches past 330 foot-pounds is kind of an issue. And you know, lo and behold, 760 miles on the car, and you know, we have a failed clutch now. However, before I even got the car, took possession of the car, I ordered an X-Clutch twin disc. So the X-Clutch twin disc is rated for over 700 foot-pounds of torque, which, let's face it, no 3-cylinder is gonna make 700 foot-pounds of torque. As of right now, we're just, you know, trying to pull the gearbox out. Another thing that I was actually gonna try to do, which we still might, is because we're getting close to that point that, you know, if we give it a little bit more power, we're gonna actually start to float the valves. What I was thinking is, we have the springs, we have the head stud kit, we have the head gasket, and of course we have every single grind of Calvert cam, like I said, that is in existence for these vehicles. However, because Ecutech as of yet do not have proper cam control for either of the camshafts, the only viable option is going to be the easy cams, which are essentially a drop-in cam. Because if we go to the Calvert A's, let alone the B's and the C's, if we go to the A's, you know, it's already shifting everything quite a bit, and we don't have control over it to like zero it out and kind of figure it out and calibrate the cam timing. So because we can't do that, the only viable option right now is going to be the Easies, which is going to be perfect because we're going to have a clutch to essentially take that power and torque, and more importantly, we're going to have, you know, more lift and more duration, meaning we can actually, you know, make more power. And to do that on the stock turbo and the stock ECU on Ecutech is going to be pretty damn cool. And of course, you know, we're thinking of taking this thing to the track and, you know, doing all kinds of cool stuff. Again, all before we do the PPG, before we do the Cyvex, all of which we already have. But anyway, long story short, I was thinking of just dropping everything all together and doing that. While I'm still going to do that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna dedicate this one video for the clutch only. So this is gonna be us basically showing you guys what we did to get the transmission out. And then once we do that, we're gonna go ahead and do everything else that we gotta do to drop the actual engine, and then we're just gonna get that done as well, because it doesn't make sense to put in the clutch and then, you know, having to drop the engine back out again. And what do you think, Chris? I don't think it's gonna be.
Yeah, it's not a smart idea.
Twice,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely not.
So yeah, so we'll do the clutch. Well, we'll show you guys, you know, how to pull the gearbox off, and then we'll show you guys how to essentially, you know, install the clutch. That clutch kit comes with flywheel bolts, a dual mass flywheel, everything you would need. It's almost like a ZE twin or an ACT twin for an Evo. So as of right now, all I've done is just remove the shift linkage cables from the transmission. Ground connection on the actual transmission, that's been disconnected. There's a wiring loom that runs alongside the transmission, and a few sensors that have been unclipped. What happens to be now a, you know, silicone coupler for the cold side intercooler piping is also removed, just to give us a little bit more room here. And I've gotten all the bolts from the top. So just like the Evo, we're gonna have to obviously disengage the transfer case from the transmission, pop the axle out, pop the other axle out too, for, you know, trying to get the transfer case to come off. So we have to pop both axles out. I'm not sure if there's an intermediate shaft. I'm sure there needs to be, you know, since it's essentially stuck to the trans. We're gonna find out as we go. It's looking like an Evo transmission, just a lot easier in my opinion. We'll see if we run into anything. You know, it's just a transmission. How hard can it be? So.
And then the next clip is
famous last words,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
pretty beefy axle actually for a stock unit.
Evo axle versus GRC axle.
The spines are a lot thicker, man. I mean, look at that. Evo versus GRC. Holy shit, that's like at least like 5-6 millimeters thicker.
That's what she said. Right? We got a nice little customer Evo pulling up here on the bronze tees. Sheesh. Hopefully this guy signs up for some work because I want to see this car a little more often.
Doing what I just did. Look at what happened to the...
Telling me the whole axle's fried because of that?
So, not necessarily the whole axle. This part of it, just because it's my car, this part of it, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sand it down, the part that the threads aren't impacted. But obviously we're gonna need to get a brand new axle nut. Unfortunately, that's the passenger side axle nut, right? You guys can see all the threads are gone. This is the driver's side, which came out with no issues. That's trashed. Half of our splines over here is trashed. The reason why that happened is because they chiseled this in just a little bit so this doesn't back out on its own under vibrations and stuff like that. And when we backed this one off for whatever reason, the other one just caught and just started chewing up the teeth. We might need to get a new axle, but it is what it is. Let's call Toyota. Let's see how much it is.
Thank you for calling Toyota Glendale. For calling Toyota Glendale.
I hate how they repeat the same thing twice. See, I own a shop. I can do the labor myself, but I run into shit like this. Insane.
This call may be monitored for
Quality assurance purposes.
when she picks up. You should just say that to her.
Yeah, can I hear the privacy policy one more time, please?
Calling Toyota Glendale. For quality of service. Calling Toyota Glendale.
Hi, I'm still trying to reach parts.
You're gonna hear that in your nightmares now. For quality insurance purposes.
You know what the shitty thing is?
What?
You know how expensive this axle will be? Zip tie right now, right?
The simplest thing.
Look at this. What are the odds of this zip tie malfunctioning?
It's one of those days.
Of course it works now. So because this is a transaxle still, even though it's an all-wheel drive, it's got a T-case, drive shaft to the back. Still a transaxle, so on the Evo, the way it works is they're just intermediate shaft that locks the transmission into the T-case. So this side that does not have threads goes inside the T-case. So essentially the differential, right? And then you have a ring and pinion there. You got the drive shaft that goes out, and then you have the passenger side axle. And then what happens is this has to go in there because the diff has to engage. So there has to be a differential, obviously, for power differential, whether it's an open diff, one-way, 1.5 way, two-way diff. So the way Corolla did it is they actually had this intermediate shaft built into the axle, and again, it's just as thick as the actual axle spines itself. So I'm extremely impressed with it. I don't think you can break that, really. I mean, the T-case looks kind of flimsy, but look at the shaft. Look at this, Chris. I mean, compare the sizes. That's like a good amount thicker, man. That's like a drive shaft shop, like level 5 axle for an Evo. But long story short, the way they're doing it is they're just doing it on the axle, so there's no intermediate shaft. Once we get this out, and you guys can see how long it is, so it goes inside the T-case and in the transmission, but it's locked in the diff, so that's kind of how the power is getting pushed to the back, if that makes sense. So with that being said, once we take this off, at this point, all we have to do is remove the drive shaft bolts, uncouple the drive shaft from the transfer case, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nuts, and then the T-case should be able to slide to the side. Once that happens, the only other thing that we actually have to do is we have to get all of this stuff off. This actually has a very weird design because if you look here, that's the slave cylinder inside the transmission. Now, we do have a spare transmission right there that we can quickly take out and kind of take a look if we need to. But I think what we could do is just, yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this one before we proceed. Other than that, we're not gonna be running into any issues. There's no clearance issues to get the trans down. It doesn't seem like it, at least at this point. But look at this. 304 stainless steel, fully back purged. Look at those welds. Beautiful, work of art. Get yours today, $9.99. All right, so right now we have gotten every single T-case bolt and nut, which was 6 nuts and 1 bolt, so 7 bolts to hold that little T-case in. But this car has definitely been engineered to be driven. So the top bolt also 17 millimeter. Like I said, there's 6 nuts, 1 bolt. That one is Loctited, so don't be scared. I got scared because I thought I'm literally stripping a, cross-running a brand new bolt. This car has 760 miles. So we got that out right now. We're trying to get the T-case off. However, to get the T-case off, you have to get this little heat shield from the top of the T-case and the drive shaft off. And to do that, you gotta take these two 12 millimeters off. And one of them is stuck to the transmission. So we're currently unable to actually push the T-case off. So right tool for the right job. This is the right tool for the wrong job, bro.
Jesus Christ.
Look that terrible.
It's not too bad. It's just like it was not grabbing.
No, never mind. It doesn't look as bad as it is, but it's really bad. Look at that there. Bro, there's a piece of the pressure plate missing.
I didn't even see that.
Oh, fuck. This is almost like a quartermaster, like a push style conversion on an Evo. It's inside the transmission, so it's inevitable. You're gonna have to bleed this every single time you do a clutch job. There's no guides for this, so I figured we're gonna be able to get the transfer case off, which we did. Obviously, once we figured, we have to push the T-case to the side, we said, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the, this top portion of the downpipe off, and we'll just be able to crack this line, take everything that's on the transmission itself, which is basically the linkage, a couple of things over here for there's a harness that runs on top of it, which is this guy right here, so 110 millimeter holding it, and then the rest of it is just one ground, 3 connections on the transmission, plugs on the transmission itself, and then we figured the only other thing we have to do is just unbolt it and then pull it off. Lo and behold, it was literally like the Evo stuff. Because the clutch is has a dual mass flywheel, it is extremely thick compared to a normal flywheel, almost double the thickness. So the problem with that becomes when you're trying to pull it off, you need a lot more room this way, and what happens is you end up hitting the subframe on this side. As you guys can see, is it this side? Hold on, let me see. Yep, exactly here. As you guys can see, we pried the crap out of it. The nice thing with this is it's electric power steering and there's no connections going to the actual rack. So we didn't have to worry about anything like that. The only thing we had to take off was the calipers, which we'd already taken off in order to get the axles off. Actual struts, same thing, we had to do that so the knuckle could swing and we could get the axle off. The only thing left was literally the subframe bolts, a 14 millimeter bolt that Tony climbed up and figured out it's a 14 mil. We weren't trying to do this initially. And then the 19s on the subframe, and then 217s on the sway bar end links. And then it just came off. I mean, it fell, but I got it. Totally got it. This is not a difficult job if you have the right tools to do it. It's not. It was the first time, again, no manuals, no nothing. I mean, there's nobody even talking about it. I went on the forums trying to see if there's anything to kind of help us out with. There is not. You can see the heat transfer over here. Had a couple launches on it, and it kept making 345, 350 foot-pounds of torque back to back to back. if you look over here, there's actually chunks missing. I can literally cut my finger on here. It's very odd. Look at that. So this is the pitch mount, and look at that, 700 miles. It's already torn. So this improves shifting whenever you go to an aftermarket unit like the Grocery Getter Performance one that we got over here. So I believe this is 60, which is a 70. I believe that's supposed to be like the middle, like mid stiff, not completely, not like rock hard. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
Kind of stiff.
There's no write-ups on how to actually do a clutch on a GRC or a Yaris, not to my knowledge at least. I didn't spend days looking for it just because how hard can it be? You're gonna need to disconnect your battery. That's the first thing you're gonna need to do. Secondly, you're gonna take your under paneling off. So it's gonna be your skid panel and this front portion of it, just so you have enough room to do everything that you need to do. There's two braces, one on this side, one on this side. This one actually connects to the intercooler piping, the middle piece. The other thing you need to do, obviously drain your transmission and the transfer case. Up next, what you want to do is you want to take off this carrier that sits right over here, like so. It's actually doweled. So this carrier sits right over here, and then the passenger side axle actually has a bearing that goes in here, and then there's a circlip for the bearing that you just kind of grab with pliers and pop it off. After that, you just use normal axle poppers. Pop that one out, pop this one out. When it comes to actually dislodging your axle, what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to remove your caliper bolts and then obviously secure them so the brake line's not getting stressed like I am right now. And you're gonna need to take your strut bolts out. So we're obviously doing this so we can swing this outwards and dislodge the axle. So if it's an East Coast car, I'm sure you're gonna have to, you know, put the axle on there and, you know, WD-40 or penetrating oil and then hit it with a hammer. We didn't have to. We just hit it with a rubber mallet, and it, you know, the axle gave, and then again we just popped it off. The other thing we ran into was obviously we had to pull the T-case off. The T-case has 6 or 7 nuts and the rest are bolts. The bolts are Loctited, so when you're taking it off, it's gonna feel like you're about to strip it. You're not going to. That's how it is. Once you get that off, you can swing it off a little bit, but the problem you run into is, if you look over here, I actually have the bolts off because initially I thought this is how you're supposed to do it. You hit the turbo oil return line. So what you have to do is you have to disconnect your steering shaft. The nice thing about this is it's electric steering, so you don't have to worry about any connections. You don't have to worry about any hydraulic fluid. And the only other thing you really need to disconnect is the 2 ABS sensors, 2 10 mils. You can pull those out. And then sway bar end links. So these are 17s. You pull your subframe down, or you drop it on yourself, whichever one is more convenient for you. He's used to it. He catches quite a few subframes on his way down. Another thing is that you are going to need to bleed the slave cylinder, and the reason you're going to need to do that is that this, just like the Quartermasters and, you know, some Evo clutches that turn it from a pull style to a push style, slave cylinder is actually housed inside the transmission. On the Evo stuff, we have the luxury of having the line outside, so we can bleed it from the outside. So it's kind of weird because you usually don't see this on an OEM transmission, this style of throwout bearing. The throwout bearing is okay, so we're not going to replace that. Just remember, obviously you're going to crack this line. You're going to get a crap ton of brake fluid that's going to come out, so you're going to need to bleed it. And whenever you're pulling the drive shaft, you're going to need to take the shield off. This is just a shield that goes on top of the drive shaft and the T-case. However, when you're trying to unbolt the T-case and pull it to the side, this bolt is connected to the trans, so while the other one's on the T-case. So you got to basically take that off for it to be able to separate. And lastly, what you want to do is you want to get all the top bolts. What I like to do is leave 2 or 3 bolts on the bottom, put your trans jack underneath it. Well, before you do that, you're gonna have to put a just a hydraulic jack underneath the transmission itself. There are 4 12mm bolts that hold the transmission, so the trans mount has 4 bolts. And all these mounts are like extremely loose. I mean, you know, Toyota makes it like this so it's, you know, comfortable to drive, but the car itself is like very rigid, so kind of weird. Anyway, oh, another thing that I like is these are actually slotted so it can move around a little bit. So it's not like the Evo stuff that, you know, just has to go directly in, and, you know, if you miss it a little bit, you start cross-threading things. Yeah, once you actually release that, you can lean the engine down like we're doing right now, stress the crap out of that engine mount. The right way to do it, obviously, is to actually have an engine hoist at the top that goes on your strut towers and holds the engine up with a chain. That's the right way to do it. Obviously, you know, doing this for a couple hours is not gonna, you know, tear your motor mount off. At least that's been our experience, and I hope it doesn't fall on my head as I'm explaining this. Obviously, you know, now we just get the flywheel bolts off. Our new kit, which we'll show you right before we wrap up the video, has the new flywheel bolts and everything, so that's nice. Now that I have everything off, I'm thinking if I should just go ahead and put the Golby's turbo kit on there. Because initially we were just gonna do the easy cams, and just do head studs and all that stuff, and you know, we're gonna have to pull it back out. But we might do that and then just keep it on Ecutech for the time being, just because we are doing development work with Ecutech, so I feel like, you know, I want to keep that relationship going. So we'll do that. Now we know how to do it. So there's obviously a couple more steps involved to get the actual engine out, including vacuuming the AC and making sure you get all the Freon out of it properly and not just vent it into the atmosphere. Kind of slowly learning as we go. Obviously there's some connections for the brake booster, there's some heater core hoses, just like you would have on any other car, fuel system stuff, you know, fuel lines and stuff like that. Chris's arm is literally shaking. That's it. It's pretty easy once you know how to do it. This is probably, you know, probably a 2-hour job, but 8-hour job, you know, if you're coming to a shop, obviously, because we do have to eat at the end of the day. Let's go look at the head gasket, the head studs, partial of the turbo kit, and the clutch. So this is my first time opening this, and right off the bat I'm seeing things that I did not know I'm gonna get. So we got a brand new throttle bearing, which is kind of funny that we're replacing it at 760 miles. These are the bolts for the throttle bearing, obviously Loctited. Clutch alignment tool, and it's not a cheap plastic, buddy. Flywheel bolts with blue Loctite. We usually use red, but I guess they want blue. I'm pretty sure this sits on the pressure plate and rides on this. Oh my god, it's like a Quartermaster 8-leg. It's a 7.25 inch. Let's look at this. So, it's not a dual mass flywheel anymore. So I believe this is rated for 700 or 770 foot-pounds of torque. Obviously, more torque than it's ever going to get thrown at, maybe. So, here's what's really interesting. Oh, it's rusting already. Alright, no problem. I can't have anything nice. The hub itself is sprung, so the discs aren't sprung, but this is just the design of the clutch, so super interesting. And then, obviously, you have a floater for the center, and then I'll get it eventually. Alright, so these are our Athena head gaskets. This is a very different approach than OEM, obviously. OEM uses MLS multi-layer steel head gasket. This uses a composite head gasket to seal the oil and coolant, but it uses a usually tool steel ring that goes around the combustion chamber. And what happens is, if you guys look, there's actually 3 high spots. They're essentially like peaks like this, you know, like sharp peaks. And whenever you actually torque down the cylinder head, the head bites into these rings, or the rings bite into the head, and it creates a super high pressure seal over here. So it's not impossible to blow this gasket, but it takes a crap ton of boost. It took about 70 pounds and a pretty lean condition on my Evo to blow one of these out. I think that's gonna be it for now. So we have a clutch that's gonna support our power goals. We have a turbo kit from Golby's with a G25 550. And then obviously we have a fuel system. We just have to obviously put the fuel system together. It's gonna be a radium surge tank. And we're gonna have a Walbro 525 in there, 1000cc Detroit injectors, but I really want to get some IDs to work with this kit. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the only guy that I know of that's clutch only, and that's fairly detailed. So appreciate you guys watching.
Another Speed Lab world's first.
Another Speed Lab special, dude. See you guys later. Oh, crack a cold one.